It would be crazy to go into a real estate or development deal without knowing your own personal return requirements or without having a solid financial modeling tool to help you do the evaluation. Hey everybody, Greg Barron, Professor of Real Estate. Thanks for joining me today. And last week on the program, I showed you one of my own personal land lot development deals that I was putting together. And if you remember, and if you haven't, go back and review last week before you view this week's YouTube video. Last week, we talked about 5 or 6 issues that are my requirements to step through the deal process. Just as a reminder, some of those were locating the deal, how to sniff it out. 2 is determining the need for it. 3 is submitting an LOI to tie up the property. And then during the LOI period, making sure that the feasibility period is long enough for you to flesh out all the details that you need to have as many data points as entry as you can to help you model it. The 4th one is having a smart master planning idea of what you're going to do to it. And that means you're going to have to hire probably a great civil engineer to help you step through that process. The 5th part is determining the preliminary costs, and your civil engineer can help you in that. Again, go back and review the prior video. I actually show you details on what I use as far as excavation, utilities, both wet and dry, paving, subsurface issues, those sort of things. The 6th is determining your financing, reaching out to your bank, getting a term sheet from them, or just calling them and saying, generally speaking, where am I going to land in a construction loan for this lot development deal? The 7th thing is determining your preliminary carrying costs. And descriptively, what I'm referring to is what is your absorption rate, i.e. lot sales, and how long you're going to be in your bank loan and how often you're going to pay down your bank based upon your lot sales. So that's the introduction to where we're going next. I'm going to pop into a really robust Excel spreadsheet. It's very easy. It's a plug and play. Stay with me. I'm actually going to model this for you, and I'm going to show you if it meets my particular internal rate of return and equity multiple requirements for my investors and for me as a developer. Now that we've gone through all those steps and collected the data that we need, I'm going to take those data points and I'm going to start to enter them into what I call my financial modeling. Now that's a big word for evaluation. And usually what this is going to entail is having a robust Excel spreadsheet, either that's predetermined or that you've bought online, or in some cases like our software ProformaPlus has one. I'm using this one, however, because it's Excel and it's a little bit easier to understand, because I want to quickly go through how you can enter your data points and come out very quickly with doing some sensitivity analysis to back in to see if you're going to have a go or no go with your project. So first off, let's just pull up the Excel spreadsheet here. And you see I've broken this down into sources and uses of cash. So right now we're going to enter our fixed costs that are our known quantities. So I'm going to start with a purchase price of $4 million. Now I'm going to come back to that at the very end, because I'm not so sure that this $4 million, along with the other costs that it's going to take to develop it, is going to yield me the rate of return that I need and is going to fit within my risk return profile. So without getting bogged down on too many of the details, I just want to anchor into the right side of this spreadsheet here and show you what I'm going to enter. So I've got $4 million right here, and then I'm going to enter my due diligence cost and also my legal and closing fees for what I think I'm going to have to come up with. And again, it's just a guess. I haven't called my attorney. I haven't asked him how much is it going to take to get us through the end result, but I just know from experience I'm going to spend at least 20 grand, so I'm going to budget that. So I come up here and I continue to go down and enter my hard costs that my civil engineer has given me for doing the roads, the utilities, and all those associated things. As you'll see on the left side here, we've got detailed excavation, utilities, paving cost here and other hard costs. And all of these are what I call my horizontal costs. This is paving down. So that comes up to $642,000 for this particular development. I've added a 15% contingency because my estimators are not always correct. And then my other hard costs are my vertical costs, which in this particular development, I'm going to do a nice gated entry. So I've given myself a $45,000 budget for any vertical costs I might do at the entry. And some might have guard shacks. They might have some postal units they want to cover for weather, that sort of thing. And then as I tab on down, I've got my soft costs I'm going to enter. Here, I've got my engineering, my platting fees, my property taxes during the course of the project. Again, they're all estimates at this point, except my engineering fee, which I got a bid on. I've even got CM, or construction management and development fee, in there. Well, actually, I don't on this one. But if we add, let me just add $150,000. I know I took it out for some reason before, probably to make the deal look better. But those are my soft costs. And then it's very simple. I come down and it totals it out to call it $5.8 million at this point. That's my total projected costs from start to finish without financing carry yet. The next thing I want to do is I want to determine how much equity I'm going to be required to put up by the bank, or that I'm going to model it with. And in this particular situation, I'm going to assume that I'm going to come up with 60% debt, and that means that I'm going to have to come up with 40% equity. So right over here, you can see that debt will be right around $3.2 million, and my equity total is going to be right at $2 million. So roughly 5.28 is my all-in cost for development. So now that I've got all that plugged in, I know that from my prior example, and we'll put the prior example up as I'm speaking, you'll know that we've got 21 lots to sell. So I have to determine my price points on my lots. And I've done that by my demographic survey of the surrounding areas. I pretty well know what those lots are going to go for from history, and from also doing some due diligence on Zillow and other things that are for sale within the immediate area. So this is my sale cash flow at this point. So if you remember, this is partially on a lake, partially surrounding a golf course. So I've got canal lots on the lake, and I've also got golf course lots. So here is where I put in my sales estimates on my lots. And as you see over here, I've got a total of 21. My canal lots are going for roughly $550,000 to $650,000. They're pretty pricey. My golf course lots, anywhere from $125,000 if I don't have any actual fairway access, up to $225,000. So my total lot sales at the end of the day is right around $6.1 million. Now, I also assume that I'm going to have some selling costs included. Some we're going to sell ourselves, and some broker realtors might bring to us. So I'm going to add 3% for selling costs, which is another $184,000. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about is absorption. It's a big word in lot sales. That really means how many lots am I going to sell, and what time frame it's going to take to sell those. This is really not a science. This is a predictive guess. The one thing that I don't want to do is be too optimistic. Serving on a bank board, I can tell you I've seen hundreds, if not 1,000 or more of these deals. And I can tell you most of the time, developers are very optimistic in their sales. So I'm going to be less optimistic, more conservative. And then what I'm going to do is forecast over here to the right. If we'll just tab over, you'll see right here that I have manually input all of the lot sales over a 3-year period. So I am assuming that over the course of 3 years on this particular development, I'm going to sell all of my lots at the price points that I have input. So you'll see at the end of the day, if I achieve my sales quota, if I achieve my absorption rate the way that I've planned, I'll come out with right around $6 million of total revenue. Now, I haven't yet talked about financing costs. So let's go back up to financing because I want to talk about buy down and rate. As I move back up to my debt assumption, you can see that, as I previously stated, I've got 60% debt and 40% equity. But as I move over here, I'm able to enter in an interest rate in this particular Excel model. So I'm going to plug in a whopping 8% rate for my construction term. Now, it might be 9. By the time it funds, it might be 7.75. If this is 2024, I don't think it's going to be less than 8 at this point in time. So conservatively speaking, I'm going to plug 8 in. The other thing that the bank's going to want to know is how much of your lot sales are going to go towards the buy down of that construction loan. So right here, I have the opportunity as a percent of each sale to pay down the loan. I'm going to use 90% of every sale to pay down the loan. I want to get out of that loan as quickly as possible. I want to stop the interest carry, and I want to know where is my break even on that, and I want to start returning every dollar I can without construction interest to my investors and to myself. So luckily, you'll see that this Excel system figures that all out for you. If we scroll over to the right, you'll see that I have interest carry also throughout the term, and it calculates to the point of 0 how much of each lot sale is going to contribute to buying down my construction loan. So the very last thing I want to do, since I'm going to have investors and I'm going to invest my own money and do most of the hard ground to plow, so to speak, is I'm going to determine what percentage is the sponsor and what percentage is the investor. And that's a word called promote. Now, it could be that if we're both putting in 50-50, we're going to split it 50-50. But in this case, in a lot of cases, I'm going to have a little more promote for doing more work. So this system allows me, as you'll see, to enter in a 30% promote at an 8% preferred to my investors first. That means that I want to pay them 8% preferred prior to me getting my promote on the back end. I want my investors to do well. But then I'm going to take an extra 30%. And again, at this point, I'm just modeling. So it's just figures on paper. I'm going to revisit this in just a second and show you how we can manipulate it to get it to my preferred return and to the return that I want to give to my investors. And quite frankly, sometimes I might have to lower my promote if I'm going to pay a little bit more for the land than I want to. So it's very simple. Total costs netted out against my total sales gives me a net proceeds of right around $418,000. Now let's tab over here because I can immediately see what my rate of return is. Now, if you remember from last week, I have a preferred return. Before I go into any deal, and this is very important, you need to determine what is your rate of return that you need to do any deal. Regardless of the cost of the land at this point, I'm in an LOI. I haven't gone hard on my earnest money, so I'm working backwards in to see if this deal is going to work or not at that price, which starts at $4 million. And what I'm seeing here is that the general partner, or me, the return is 17%, and the return to investors is 13%. And my equity multiple to my investors is 1.17, and to me, it's 1.24. This deal is too skinny based upon these returns and these particular lot sale prices. So what is the only thing that I can manipulate at this point in time? I can manipulate how much I pay for the land, or I can manipulate my construction cost, or I can manipulate my sales price. I've determined in this deal the only thing that I can manipulate, because this deal was brought to me fully engineered, is I can only manipulate the sales price of that land, because I'm not going to squeeze any more money out of the market, and I don't want to be too optimistic. I'm pretty dead set that that's the money I'm going to get for these lots. So now that I know that $4 million is really too much to pay for this property, I can either tell the seller I'm sorry, or I can enter what would work for me. What I have found in the past is that it's always good to have a robust Excel spreadsheet to be able to sit in front and talk about these things to a seller to help them see how you're trying to make this deal work. So I know $4 million won't work. So let's try $3,750,000, and then we're going to scroll down to my internal rate of return and my equity multiple and see if that gets me closer to what I need to make this deal work. So I'm going to enter $3,750,000 at this point. Basically, I'm going to give it a $250,000 haircut, and I don't have to do anything else because everything else is static. My hard cost and my sales price. And let's scroll all the way down, all things being equal, without changing anything else. Let's see where I'm going to land in my internal rate of return. And as you see, as a sponsor, now I'm at 31%. That's a good thing. And my investors are over 20%, actually at 21% internal rate of return. My equity multiple is 1.4, and theirs is 1.26 on the money that they've invested. Now, the question you might have, overall, it's about a 26.5% rate of return blended. So the question is this a good deal? Is it worthy of proceeding? And I would say on a land deal at 31% and a 21% rate of return, it's pretty marginal. Now, my cutoff point is a minimum of 25% to the sponsor, which usually gives the investors between 17 and 20 at that rate. Now, that could be better if I sell lots quicker because I have less interest carry. It could be better that after I bid this out and manage my hard costs, that I bring my construction costs down. But as it stands right now, I would take this project back to the seller and I would go, look, I can't do this at 4. Let me show you why, but I can offer you somewhere in the 3.7 to 3.75 range to make my numbers work. Now, 2 things I want to tell you about as we tie a bow on the rest of this is, number one, nobody likes to go back to retrade. Your brokers and realtors hate it, your sellers hate it, and I really don't like to do it. But if it's not going to work, I'm going to make my best effort to show them how it would work, but I'm going to have to come down on my price. The next thing you need to do is, if he does agree, and if that 3.7 is the right price, I close out my feasibility period and I go hard, and then I start to set up and the clock really starts ticking. The next thing that we'll do is the final is we'll complete our construction documents, we'll get it out to bid to all of our subcontractors and vendors, and we'll get started as quickly as possible so that we can start selling lots. So that in a nutshell is how you put a land deal together. It doesn't matter if it's smaller or bigger. Some of these same steps and the same financial modeling technique is used on practically every one. By the way, if you'd like a copy of this Excel model, or if you'd like to have a copy of my steps that I usually use, be sure and click on the link below and we'll try to get one out to you. By the way, be sure and hit the like and subscribe if you like this material. And always educate, evaluate so that you can ultimately execute to increase your own personal wealth. See you soon.